This is EF Outbound, a podcast that showcases transformative travel stories that defy our expectations, challenge our assumptions, and teach us something new about the world and ourselves. I'm Shelby Alatmani, and I'll be your host for this episode.
Finally, it's like I'm standing at the top of this mountain and I'm like, I have never done this and I didn't think I could do it and I believed I couldn't, but I'm here and I'm bawling like a baby. And it's like, whatever else there is to do, anything else there is to do in my life, there is nothing stopping me from doing it because I can do it. That's why I'm supposed to be here. I can do this. I just have to do it one step at a time.
That's Jason. Jason is a math teacher, a community leader, a graduate student in urban planning, and a travel enthusiast. But only a few years ago, Jason was living in his hometown of Houston, Texas, after getting a divorce and leaving his job as a minister out in California.
I had left everything. So I had a career, but I wasn't in that anymore.
The move back to Houston wasn't a welcome one, and Jason was feeling farther away from himself than ever before. Jason wasn't really Jason.
Something about staying here, this isn't the right time, this isn't the right place, this isn't the right, something's not right about me. I'm missing something.
Jason will share his story about giving up everything, even when he had almost nothing, to move across the globe in search of his path. It's a hard and uncertain road full of false starts and dead ends, bumps and divots, uncertainty and fear that eventually led him to China, Guatemala, and ultimately to himself. And all he had to do was go forth one step at a time. But back in Houston, Jason was struggling to even find that first step.
I didn't have a job. Most of my friends were either in California or scattered around the U.S. And there I am finding myself in Houston and not really sure what I was doing. Then after about 9 months, I was trying to figure out what am I doing? How am I doing anything or moving forward? So a friend of mine said, well, I live out here in West Virginia. Why don't you hop in your truck and drive on over and move in, and I've got an extra room and life will be good. In West Virginia, I only knew one person, and so I just figured if I can just get away and try to start something different, then that will lead to newer things. And I said, well, all right, sure. And so threw everything in the back of my truck and started driving from Houston to West Virginia.
It seemed like a great plan. He could start over in a brand new place, make new friends, begin down the road to a new and improved Jason.
But when I stopped in St. Louis to see some friends and just to stop for 2 days, he calls me up and says, hey, I'm leaving my job. I'm leaving West Virginia. I don't really have a place for here. So then it's like, well, okay. So I looked at my friends and I was like, can I stay a little bit longer? And so I ended up in St. Louis randomly for about a year and a half.
In that year and a half, Jason jumped from couch to couch, job to job, still looking for the thing that would lead him to something better.
Basically, I applied for anything and everything I could. I worked as a groundskeeper, and then I did some consulting work, substitute teaching for one of the private schools nearby. Half-time at Office Depot as the copy and print guy, and half-time as an archivist. So part of the time I'd be sitting at a desk scanning all these letters and correspondence, and then the other half of the time I was telling people, would you like me to put it on colored paper?
Despite feeling stuck between jobs and places, Jason did find an interest in teaching. And as he continued to reflect on what his path might look like, He realized some of the most meaningful and exciting moments in his life thus far all had something in common.
When I had left Texas to go to St. Louis for seminary, it was just like, well, this is great. I'm seeing some new places, and I'm learning some new things about the world. And then when I moved from Missouri to California, and I was working out there, it's like, oh my goodness, this is even better.
And then it clicked.
Every time that I moved to a new place, it's like exciting and wonderful and fascinating. And I just realized, I'd like to spend a year teaching overseas and get a chance to see part of the world. But also then I realized I don't know how to do this. I don't know how traveling works. See, my family, we didn't travel. It just wasn't in their mindset. I mean, my family is just fine staying in Texas. They don't really see a need to go and do other things. It's just not them. And for me, it was just this constant feeling of, if I want to do this, and I do, I don't know how. I went through the interview and the application. They said, hey, you sound like a great fit. We'd be really happy to have you. But have you thought about moving to China? And I was like, no, not really. But let me chew it over a bit. When I started looking at the pictures and the images and the landscape and everything around, and I just was like, I've never seen trees like that. I've never seen mountains like that. I've never seen buildings like that. And I would see these pictures and I was like, I don't even know how this fits. My mind can't put it together. And you got to understand, I'm a math-minded person. For me, everything has to click one step after another. And if it doesn't fit, I got to figure out where it fits. Just this part of the world, I can't connect it in my head. So I need to see it and feel it and experience it for it to connect and click in place. After a while, I was like, I think this could work out.
So you said yes. Let's do it.
Yeah, well, it was kind of a long drawn out yes. It took a while. Like from the part where they said, hey, there's a school that we'd be interested in you applying to working with, then, there was like this whole visa process. And as soon as they said there's a visa process, and I was like, oh man, what's that even going to entail? I don't even know. And then it's like, wait, how much money is it going to cost to go through all that? So I was like, okay, I'm paying for a visa, then I'm paying for a passport because I'd never had one before. And they offered me this position, and I'm like, do I even want to do this? What am I going to do with my truck? The only reason why I could get from job to job, place to place, living either in Texas or in St. Louis was, well, I have a truck. I can go from place to place, but as soon as I sell it, how do I know that I'll be able to get a vehicle when I get back? How do I know I'll be able to be on my own 2 feet? How do I know that I'll still be self-sufficient if I don't have my vehicle? And if I sell my vehicle, then it means I'm going. If I sell it, then it means I'm done here. I'm not looking back. That's it. And so essentially, I'm sitting on the floor of this place where I'm basically dog sitting for somebody, and I'm like crying my eyes out because I'm like, what do I do? What am I supposed to do? Is this it? Is this the thing? I kept feeling this thing, this message of, I have to let go or else this is me for the rest of my life. There's no new version of Jason unless I just let go. And so finally I was like, yes, I will come. Yes, I'll sell my truck. Yes, I'm leaving all this. I'm going to assume that there is something more out there. And I'm going to assume that I can make it. And I'm going to assume that whatever it entails, that's what I'm going to do. And the phone call when I had to call up my family and explain to them, so the other side of the world? Yeah, I'm going there. And, this country that maybe you don't necessarily know as much about or feel as comfortable with, and it may be hard to communicate with me, and you wouldn't necessarily just be able to travel there all the time. Yeah, I'm going there. So that took a while, and it took a while for them to feel comfortable with it. But yeah, I finally said yes. I stopped in Beijing first. Now, keep in mind, I don't speak Chinese. And there I am in Beijing, and so with that it's supposed to be like an hour, maybe 2 hour layover, but then I realized it's more like 5 hours. And it's one thing whenever like you get off of a plane for a layover in a place where you know what they're saying. It's another one whenever you're getting off with all these people and you're like, I don't know what they're saying. Nobody around me knows what I'm saying. And we're all sitting here. Are they also trying to go to Shanghai after this? Are they also trying to get on a plane after this? I didn't know who to ask. There was nobody at any front desk for me to talk to. If I don't get on the right plane and get to the right place, I don't even know for sure that I'll ever get anywhere. I may be stuck in this little tile floor for the rest of my life until they try to figure out why I'm sitting there, and then who knows what happens to me after that. So finally, after like 5 hours, they funneled us to the plane. So I fly over to Shanghai. But it's at like 2 a.m. and I'm like trying to go to like what I think is a baggage claim, and I think there was like an English word says baggage claim. I mean, it's an international airport, so at least the airport has signs. But then somebody was finally able to help me. It's like, hey, I need to get my bag, and they're like, well, your bag's on the wrong plane. Here's a paper form. Fill it out, and I'm like, I'm never gonna see my clothing again. I physically had nothing. I have no stuff. I have no truck. I don't even necessarily have a person there to take me to a job. And I've got even less of nothing than I thought I had before. And I don't know. I finally get to where I'm supposed to go, and I get to the hotel, and I'm walking in at 3 a.m, and I'm like, I have to wake up at 7:30 and go with everybody at 8 o'clock to get to work. Great. So let's go to bed. I wake up at 7:30, and I'm like, I'm exhausted. I'm like, it's like 4 hours of sleep, if that. I don't have extra clothing, and I didn't have toiletries because everything's in a bag somewhere. I probably smell terrible. I probably look terrible. I feel terrible. And it's like, let's go to the next room. And so I'm walking along, and then I stop walking along because it turns out I wasn't walking through a doorway. It turns out that the plate glass there was so perfectly see-through that I thought it was open air and went smack into it. And this is like some of the thickest glass that it was thick. There's no moving it. It didn't budge. I budged. And I split open my eyebrow, and I'm bleeding profusely. Finally, after 5-10 minutes or something, it finally stopped bleeding. And so I was finally able to go back to training, and I didn't have to go get stitches. And so I now have a really awesome scar. And the first day of China, and I split open my face, and I almost have to go to the hospital. So hey, I think it was later that first day after training, and we're walking along to grab food somewhere. There's this one teacher that's there, and she's like, so I'm not sure I should be here, and I'm not sure why I'm here. And so she's like, I feel kind of lost. And I looked at her, and it's like, we're in China. Essentially, we've left everything, and we came to a foreign country, and we're here. And so whatever else happens after this, even if you don't finish your year, even if you don't stay on beyond this, whatever happens, you're here. That changes everything. And so it's like me talking to her was basically me having to talk to myself.
The mere act of packing up, selling his truck, and simply being in China had opened Jason's eyes to a new world of possibilities. He had finally taken the first step on a road that had once seemed too far away or too difficult to start down. And now, he had a chance to start over and explore himself through this brand new place.
So basically, I'm there for 2 months, and so Saw more of Shanghai, and I love temples. So I went and visited several different temples while I was in Shanghai. And I actually went on 2 dates with this one person, and that didn't turn out quite as well as I'd hoped. But, hey, it's okay. And ended up, learning about different foods to eat and things to try, and it was great. And I loved Shanghai, and I loved the people I worked with, and it was a really good experience, getting a chance to see not just the temples, but the way of life that was there. But then it was time to head up to Tianjin, and it turns out that a lot of people in Shanghai don't necessarily have the best impression of Tianjin. They said the whole place is covered in dust. They're just not as friendly up there, and it's just not as great. And so actually people were there, they were actually trying their best to get me to stay. Like, they're going to their supervisor, and they're going to like other people that they could, and they're like, can we keep him here? We need another teacher anyway. He's great. Don't send him to Tianjin. And I'm like, man, what is this place? It's like, Yeller does really trying to keep me here. When I got there, they were having a festival. It was this celebration of like ancestors. And so what it is that you buy this stuff called ghost money, and it's like this type of paper. And the way they view it is like you're buying money that you then burn, and when you burn it, you're burning it to your ancestors, and so that they can use that money now because you burned it for them. They would burn it on these street corners because they saw that the spirits of their ancestors were more likely to be walking down the streets, because that's like an open pathway. So they're burning all of this paper money everywhere. And so I get there, and I'm driving down these streets, and I just see fires in the street and smoke everywhere. And I'm like, what did I walk into? It's like, did I just walk into like some riots, or did I walk into like some sort of terrible like Armageddon or something? And the place is surrounded by manufacturing and terrible like wind current circulation, and so the pollution in Tianjin is even worse than Beijing. And yes, they had their malls and they had their streets, and they had, it wasn't so bad in every place, but it was definitely a modernized city, but it wasn't a cultural city. It was more of a, we're here because of business and because of manufacturing, and that's why you're here, is you're here to teach people English. And my doing my job well means that they have a chance at trying something new or getting beyond the life that they're living right then. But before I went, I basically spoke to more and more people who had done it, and I started to learn about what it actually was. If we as Western speakers don't come over there and help them go beyond their classroom understanding of English and trying to speak English with the accent that they had, and trying to actually get beyond that to a more westernized way of speaking, unless we can do that, this unfair, biased system that we live in, it is always going to make it harder for them, and they won't be able to get out. So it's like the best way for you to help them get beyond that is to help them to conquer it. So if you can be there and just be humble and admit the fact that you are an outsider coming in to help them, you will change their life.
Day by day, step by step, Jason was making strides toward a more fulfilling life. And by helping his students conquer those unfair biases against non-native speakers, he discovered a love for service and volunteering, and helping people learn skills to make their own opportunities.
It was right around January, and this is like, we went through, Chinese New Year and everything, and so it was just this fascinating, exciting time, and I really enjoyed getting a chance to see that. Well, and I was thinking to myself, I want to get a chance to go back to grad school. I want to get to that next step. And while I was doing that, I thought, I'm really good at math. That's something that I should be teaching. And so if I'm doing that, then how could I go about that but still get a chance to experience more of China? I find out about this international school, the Tianjin International School. And so, maybe how could I find a way to teach and maybe get a degree in math, or maybe, do something online. I can be getting my degree while I teach there. This would be great.
So he applied.
And I just wasn't what they were looking for. But I was like, I finally took this long to be happy about who I am. And if I'm not the right fit, I don't need to apologize for that. But I was like, but it's time for me to teach math.
Soon a new opportunity presented itself. But this time, it was all the way back at the beginning of his journey. All the way back in Houston, Texas.
And I was like, I never want to move back to Houston. I don't want to move back. Who really wants to move back to Houston? That's crazy. So, but the thing was, at this one school that was here, I knew a person who knew my sister, and she had talked about this school. Their philosophy was having kids come to the school, live there from Monday through Friday, take them through study halls and all these different programs where they immerse themselves in education and their community. And it's all these students that come from these like low-income neighborhoods, and we get a chance to help them see beyond that. And 24 hours later, I got an email from that friend of my sister's saying, "Hey, are you done with China? Because I think there might be a job that you'd be great for." I kid you not. And so I interviewed and did everything by Skype.
And sure enough, he got it.
This is like 3 or 4 months before my contract is up in China. I didn't want to tell them because I loved these people at my school. I loved all these people I worked with. They're wonderful. They did so much to help me learn and grow. I did these professional developments and had opportunities I would have never had otherwise. And so to tell them I have to leave, and it was like when I finally started telling people, and you have people staring at you, and you're telling 5 people at a time, and one of them walks off because they're like, I don't know how to handle this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I done? My last week, I got on the train and I went from place to place. Nobody with me. Nobody else was able to take the same time off. And so I just went randomly. I walked the Great Wall, and I hiked up to Sun Yat-sen's burial grounds and on this mountain. And I had a chance to see these beautiful temples and mountainside creations and this beautiful beach in Qingdao. And I had a chance to visit my old school in Shanghai, and it was amazing. One of the things that I had felt before was this sense of I don't know how to do things myself, just me, just Jason. I felt like somebody always had to try to take me through step by step. And, to some extent, there's always still that. But I still felt like I needed too much hand-holding. And starting from the ground up is something that I couldn't do. And so if there was something new or something fascinating, I was like, I don't know how to do new things. I just can't. But you've got to figure it out. And you've got to just do some stuff without being able to even communicate sometimes. And I looked around, I realized I had to make my own trip and my own visits and find my own restaurants and go places and figure it all out myself. If I can do that here, I can do that anywhere. And now it's like, hey, this is something I got to figure out. Let's go do it. And so it's like that was the beginning of feeling that I can live my own life and do things myself. And so it was like I had the hardest last 3 months, but this beautiful finale to it where I was like, I'm so glad I'm here and I'm ready for the next part of the journey.
China had helped Jason feel more like the Jason he'd been waiting for. And back in Houston, teaching math and helping kids in his community, he was truly happy. And yet there was still something missing that he couldn't quite put his finger on. Jason was in limbo, but even so, he felt confident that he was on the right path. And he felt that whatever it was that he was still missing would eventually present itself when the time was right. So when he found out one of his friends was living in Guatemala, he just knew he had to check it out.
And I found out that she was working for this company that was there, that their biggest focus it was Hope Renewed. And Hope Renewed was focusing on how to transform the communities of Guatemala, and especially near Guatemala City.
Jason spent 3 weeks down in Guatemala volunteering at a local school and getting to know the people in the community.
And we spend a week at the city dump, seeing what people have gone through and networking with people and understanding their experience. And I work to try to help their nonprofit to restructure how they were doing work in their community. And I saw a life in a world where I was like, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm supposed to go to graduate school for. I'm supposed to be an urban planner and a community developer. I'm supposed to change communities like this. That's what I'm supposed to do. And so when I came back, that's what I started grad school for. And now I'm getting to learn more about how education and community development work together, and we can actually change neighborhoods tangibly. And I'm like, this is what I've been waiting for.
From couch surfing and job searching and worrying about his truck, to traveling the world on his own and helping others along the way, Jason had finally found the Jason he'd been longing for, even though it took a few steps and thousands of miles to get there. And now, Jason is partway through his graduate program in urban planning. When he's not at school as a teacher or as a student, he's working with the Houston Planning Department and looking for the next new place to explore. But back in Guatemala, before he returned to Houston, to his students, to his community, and even before realizing another new passion, Jason made a quick trip to Antigua and decided to go on a hiking tour for the very first time.
It's 15 minutes in, and we're hiking up, and it's this sandy, ashy, kind of weird sand, and I'm like, no, I can't do this. And the tour guide looks at me, he's like, the first 15 minutes is always the hardest. Just go another leg. Just try one more. I'm like, okay, all right. You're crazy, but okay. And so I go the next leg, and it's not quite as bad, but it's still terrible. And the next leg, and the next leg, and it just keeps going. And I never quite tell myself I'm quitting the way I did after that first 15 minutes, because I was done. I was not going further. I don't know how he convinced me to keep going. But it was hard the whole way, the entire way up that mountain. It was exhausting, and they were going fast, and they were in better shape than I was. And we're going, and we're going, and we're going. And I don't know how I kept going, but I was the slowest. But I kept saying one step at a time, just one step at a time. I will keep going. And it was, the last bit was even harder than anything else. And we finally get up to the top. It looked like you had walked into heaven. Like, you walk up to the top, and it's like one of those cloudy things where you're like, am I dead? Is it, and it's like, am I going to walk over and see, St. Peter or something? And it was mystical. And finally, it's like, I'm standing at the top of this mountain, and I'm like, I have never done this, and I didn't think I could do it, and I believed I couldn't, but I'm here, and I'm bawling like a baby. And it's like, whatever else there is to do, anything else there is to do in my life, there is nothing stopping me from doing it, because I can do it. That's why I'm supposed to be here. That's what God's telling me. That's what I'm supposed to hear. I can do this. I can do anything I'm supposed to do. I just have to do it one step at a time.
EF Outbound is brought to you by EF Education First, the world leader in international education. This episode was hosted and produced by Shelby Elitmani, with help from me, Meg Martineau, and Tucker Hamilton. It was sound designed by Billy Raznek. For more information on the podcast, head over to ef.com/podcast. And if you like what you hear, don't forget to subscribe. If you want to share your own transformative travel story with us, email us at outbound@ef.com.